Oh yeah! Hey everyone, today in this video, I'm going to be checking out the ZOTAC MEK Hero gaming desktop, specifically the model number A7647STI. They did send me the sample, but any opinion expressed in this video is strictly my own. That being said, if you're interested in this PC or you want to find out more about it, the link to it will be in the video description. They make multiple versions and variants of this gaming PC. So ours consists of the ZOTAC Gaming RTX 4070 Ti Super. This is their white edition, their Trinity OC GPU. This also features the AMD 7600 CPU, 16 gigabytes of DDR5, 1 terabyte SSD. That's going to be your NVMe M.2 drive, Windows 11 gold certified power supply unit, and it has a mid-tower case with tempered glass side panel. Now let's go ahead, let's open it up and see what's inside. Here's a look at all the contents. First up, we have our two Wi-Fi antennas, followed by our power cord. Next, you'll see our quick start guide here with the breakout of all the included contents. Top view of your I/O. That'll vary depending on the make and model that you get. Then we have instructions for how to connect to your display, as well as a rear view of your motherboard I/O. Again, that will also vary depending on your make and model. And then last but not least, we have the desktop itself. Let's look at this in more detail. First up, looking at the top of the case, you'll see magnetic dust cover, easy to remove and clean, followed by all of our I/O buttons here, power button, reset switch, got some indicator lights, USB 3.0, two USB 2.0 ports, headphone jack, and mic jack. Next, you'll see the front panel here. So it's going to be solid metal with the MEK Hero logo and branding in the bottom right-hand corner. There is some mesh on both sides here for venting. Now you're looking at the front panel with the cover removed to reveal 3 included 120 millimeter fans. Now you're looking at the very bottom of the case with our 4 solid feet with good ground clearance. So if you put this on hard floors, you'll have some breathability, and you'll probably still have some airflow if you put this on carpet. You'll see a removable screen right here to clean as needed, and we have our handle if we ever need to remove that front panel right there. Looking at the back side, you'll see some additional information up at the top: exhaust fan, motherboard I/O, HDMI, BIOS flashback, USB 3.0 and USB Type-C SS10 speeds. We have 4 USB 2.0 ports. Then we have 2 USB 3.0 ports, hardwired Ethernet or Wi-Fi, and your audio jacks right there. Then you'll see our GPU. We're going to have 1 HDMI and 3 display ports, additional venting, and our power supply down at the bottom with our toggle on and off switch and power cord plug. This is the back side of the case, just a solid white panel with 2 screws that we can remove just finger tight to reveal the back side of our case, and we can check out the cable management here. So pop those off, slide the cover off, and look at that, very neat, tidy, great job with that cable management here. Still have room to add some additional drives if you want. You'll see our power supply down here. This is not a fully modular power supply. We do have 1 included hard drive tray right here if you want to add a 3.5-inch drive, and there's some additional brackets I'm seeing in there as well. But our cables are tucked nice and neat along the sides and out of the way down below. And last but not least, take a look at our tempered glass side panel here with protective film on it. And it's just magnetically clasping to the case right there. And we can slide it out of the way. So we can take a look at the interior parts and components. First up, 800 watt gold certified power supply. You'll see our beautiful ZOTAC gaming GPU right here, triple fan array. We have lots of case fans included. I'm impressed for a pre-built that they've included so many. So we got 6 on the case, our 7th one on our CPU cooler. Then we got technically 3 more on our GPU, bringing our total to 10 fans. We have a Kingston Gen 4 NVMe M.2 drive, 1 terabyte capacity. 16 gigabytes of Kingston Fury DDR5 RAM with the Beast branding on it. You'll see our lovely tower cooler with fan. Everything's connected properly, hooked up in place. We have room for additional expansion with another open PCIe slot. I see a USB Type-C header right there. So multiple options. You want to add LEDs, things along those lines. Everything's really nice, neat, and tidy. I want to point out too, they're using the ASRock B650M-C motherboard. Again, supporting DDR5, which we have installed right there. Now let's go ahead, let's power this thing on, boot it up, and try it out. Oh yeah! All right, the PC's powered on. Take a look at everything up close. Gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. See all the fans from all different sides and angles. Our beautiful ZOTAC gaming GPU. Look at that white. Triple fans down below. Coolers all illuminated and lit up. There's our Kingston NVMe. Some glow coming through the side front panel grills. Here's a look at the back side. Now we're looking at everything with the lights off. Too cool. Top down view. There's that side with the mesh. Got some underglow right there. Really bright. RGB. Good diffusion on the white case. Looks really sleek. Upon first boot, you'll be pleasantly surprised to learn that you have your typical Windows 11 software suite. The only additional applications we noticed that were installed were your ASRock motherboard software. That's great, so we can easily do updates, control RGB, things like that. And then we have our GeForce experience, but that makes sense because we're rocking our 4070 Ti Super. Other than that, everything else is going to be your same old Windows 11 software. You'll notice Chrome, Geekbench, things like that. We installed that after the fact so we could benchmark, download games, things along those lines. But everything else, it's going to be normal, standard Windows 11, fresh, clean install with your motherboard software and your GPU software. Now, if you're wondering about more of those specs, we can confirm it is the Ryzen 5 7600 right there with our 16 gigs of RAM. Again, we have our 4070 Ti Super showing up. Everything looks great. And our 1 terabyte drive has 931 gigabytes of usable space, of which we still have 885 gigabytes left. Now let's see how fast that drive is. So the drive in the system is by Kingston. It's the Kingston SN-V2S. This is a Gen 4 NVMe, but it's not going to be the fastest Gen 4 NVMe drive out there today. The speeds for this drive per Kingston are 3,500 megabytes per second read speeds, 2,100 megabytes per second write speeds. What do we actually get with Crystal Disk Mark? Well, for read speeds, we got just above what they advertise, so 3565 for our read speeds, and we actually did substantially better on our write speeds than what's advertised of almost 2,800 megabytes per second for our write score. So it's great to see that with this build, we are getting the proper spec for this particular drive to make sure we're getting that great performance. In the future, if you want to look into other Gen 4 NVMe drives that you'd want to put in this to boost the performance further, you have that luxury. It's great to see that they didn't put in a Gen 3 drive with this build, so we are taking advantage of some of those faster read and write speeds, which if you're doing some gaming, you want to save all your games on here, you'll appreciate having that quicker file access, also for photos, videos, all of that good stuff. Diving into some more tests and benchmarks, everything you're seeing here is stuff you can download for free and test against your own system. So first, we're looking at CPU-Z to get a better feel for all the parts and components. Here's our AMD Ryzen 5 7600 CPU with additional processor information. Next, you'll see our motherboard info here. Again, it's the ASRock B650M-C, followed by our memory, 16 gigabytes of DDR5, SPD settings if you're interested. Then we have our graphics setting. Again, it's the RTX 4070 Ti Super. And then you'll see our bench score here, our single thread score, and our multi-thread score. Let's compare that to other scores from CPU-Z. Our single thread score of 716 puts us right here between the Intel i7 and i9. It's their 12700H variant and their 12900H variant. We're below the top and leading AMD CPU here, the 7950X at 767. At the very top, you'll see that spot is held by Intel's 13900K at over 900. With the multi-thread score of 5924, we're right under the leader, which is a variant of our CPU. It's the 7600X. So we're in that second place right here, beating out the 12600K, 12500K, 12400, 5600X, 5600, 11600. You get the idea there. But with our 12-threaded CPU, we're going to be at or near the top in regards to performance. Moving right along, we have our Geekbench 6 scores here. Single core score of 2726 and a multi-core score of 1189.5. Here's our system information. Take a look at that. You'll see our memory info as well. Then we have a breakdown of our single core performance right there. If you're interested in looking at that further, feel free to pause the screen. And same with the multi-core performance, there's our breakdown. Now let's see how it stacks up against the competition. Our score of 2726 puts us, you guessed it, right below their benchmark for the 7600 at 2732. So we're well within range, and we just beat out the i9-13900. You'll see we surpassed the 7800X 3D. A lot of great CPUs in this range here. There's the 13600K. So you'll see at the very top, though, the leader is going to be the 13900KS, KF, and 13900K, followed by AMD's very own 7950X and 7900X CPUs at the top. Looking at the multi-core score, you'll see they got a score of 1222.3 for their 7600. We finished a little bit further down here. We got a score of 1189.5. We just edged out the 5900X right here, so we're close. Competing with the 12600, 12900, 10980XE, 12600K to get a feel for where we're at. But basically, we'd have to double this score. You'll see at the very top here, the leaders and best. So a pretty substantial difference here at the top with the 13900, multiple variants, the 7950X again, 3D version as well, 7900X, 13700K, 7900X 3D. So you get the idea of where the CPU is going to rank with the competition up at the top. Next, we're looking at our Cinebench performance here. So take a look up at the top, and we have our ranking down at the bottom. So GPU up at the top here, great to see. Next, multi-core for the CPU right at the middle of the pack. And then our single core, same thing, slightly improved. And then our MP ratio more towards the bottom here. And diving into Cinebench performance a little bit further, thanks to nanoreview.net, they have really helpful information on all the different CPUs and their Cinebench score. So up at the top, no surprise here, the latest and greatest from Intel, both their 13th and 14th gen CPUs. Then you'll see making the top 10 is AMD's first appearance with the 7950X. Let's go further down though. We got to go quite a ways down here to get our 7600. We got to go to the 113th slot. So there it is. It's competing with a lot of laptop CPUs. And then the next nearest CPU is going to be the 5800X 3D at 109. And it surpasses the 5700X, 5800, 5700G. And then it's competing with some Intel laptops. I'm going to see if we have any Intel desktop CPUs here. Looks like the next Intel CPU up the top is going to be the 11700K and KF variants. And then further down, Intel desktop, let's see if we have any. 12600, 10900, 11900 below it. Let's talk about thermal. So you'll notice we have all the panels on. The PC's been powered on for a couple of hours at idle. This is what you can realistically expect. So our CPU showing right at about 37 degrees Celsius, using 20.2 watts for our power consumption. GPU right at 29 degrees Celsius, currently consuming about 14.6 watts. Now let's stress this thing out, warm it up, and see what we're looking at. So a little under 10 minutes into our full stress test, it appears we got our max readouts for the CPU and the GPU. It's also good to point out that with everything being stressed, look at how consistent these are. So these charts showing and monitoring everything that's going on. It's great to see that everything is not spiking up or down or going crazy like that. So the power supply is stable. The temps are very stable and flat. Everything maxed out under a full load and stress is holding up just fine. So what do we get? our Ryzen 5 7600 CPU tops out right around 77 degrees Celsius, and that's pulling 90 watts. And our GPU tops out right about 68, 69 degrees Celsius, and that's pulling 285 watts at 100% utilization. So everything well within range, nothing's overheating, nothing's struggling, the power supply is holding up. Everything is doing what you would expect it to do. If you really want to stress this computer out, you can expect similar results. You know I'm not going to miss a chance to get the FLIR out. So with the panel door opened up, take a look. Let's check out the GPU power connector here. Not bad. 90 to 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Keep in mind that's different than Celsius. There's the GPU getting nice and toasty in some of those hot spots there. Take a look at the motherboard as well. See some of the hot spots. Air cooler's doing fantastic. RAM's not too hot either. Take a look, big picture again. Pretty sweet. Thought we'd look at the back side here too. Try to get in the power supply there. GPU. Rear exhaust fan. Motherboard I/O. And back to the front. So far, so good. We're bringing out all the toys here. We got the smoke machine so I can show you the airflow. The case fan configuration is going to be bringing in cool air from the side to the front panel on both sides with that vented mesh. And again, we got the triple fan array. It's going to be exhausting the warm air out the top and the backside right there. So take a look. As that smoke hits the front panel, you can see it bringing it up and in, and then it will exhaust it out the top and the backside. I'll show you that here as we inject it into the case. So get a feel for that. That's what you can expect with the current configuration, how it's going to basically pull that air in and then push it out. Really quick, wanted to check back in one more time. We hit the 20-minute mark on our full stress test for the power supply, the CPU, and the GPU. Everything's working great. In this section, we're going to be taking a deep dive into more specs, data, and gameplay benchmarking with our 4070 Ti Super and our 4070 Super, as well as a previous ZOTAC build with just your regular 4070 GPU. So the lens we're going to be looking at this with is through the GPU performance in these pre-builds, as well as the value to performance ratio that they present. Hopefully this will be really digestible for you. So first up, to get us started, give us that frame of reference. We have to look at the cost measured in dollars. So our 4070 is going to be the most affordable option here. Then about, I'd say, $50 to $100, give or take, you'll be looking at the 4070 Super, and then you bump that up a couple $100 to get to the 4070 Ti Super. Next, we have our GPU length. This is measured in millimeters. The 4070 Ti Super is going to have the longest length at 307 millimeters, followed by 234 millimeters for the 4070 Super, and then last but not least, 226 millimeters in length for the 4070. Next, we have our width. This is just an estimate measured in slots, but you'll find it interesting that the 4070 technically has 2.2 slots of width compared to just 2 slots for the 4070 Super. So maybe that S should stand for slim. The 4070 Ti-S comes in at 2.5 slots. Next, let's talk about power. This is measured in watts. This is going to be the maximum power your GPU is going to draw. 200 watts for the 4070, 220 watts for the 4070 Super, and 285 watts for the 4070 Ti Super. Next, let's talk about VRAM. This is all GDDR6X memory for our GPUs. The 4070 and 4070 Super have the same 12 gigabyte capacity, whereas the 4070 Ti Super comes in at 16 gigabytes, but you will notice they all have the same 192-bit bus. Typically, the greater the bus width, the more data the bus can transfer in a clock cycle. So usually for all of these metrics, the higher the better. The more, the merrier. Next, we have our boost clock. Here, this is measured in megahertz. You'll see the 4070 has a 2490 megahertz boost clock. This is the exact same as the 4070 Super, whereas you see a boost in the boost clock when you get to the 4070 Ti Super at 2625. Moving right along the CUDA cores, no surprise here, 4070 and 4070 Super have the same amount of CUDA cores. The 4070 Ti Super takes the cake though, adds a pretty good amount of CUDA cores compared to the other 4070s. Now it's time for gaming benchmarks. So what do all these specs actually get you in the real world with your favorite games? So first up, looking at Forza 5, 1080p extreme preset, 4070 comes in at 155 FPS, followed by 173 for the 4070 Super and 194 for the 4070 Ti Super. 1440p, same settings, extreme. We get 131 FPS for the 4070, 149 FPS for the 4070 Super, and 168 FPS for our 4070 Ti Super. Next title up is Rainbow Six 1080p Ultra settings. I left this in here even though the data is so wonky and I can't figure it out for the life of me. I'm thinking that the 4070 maybe had a different preset, but I no longer have that sample on hand, but this is super unusual to me. I confirmed the data too in our spreadsheet. Anyways, it's beside the point, but 4070 shows 272 FPS at 1080p Ultra, technically, but I can't verify anymore. 4070 Super's coming in at 225 FPS, and our 4070 Ti Super's coming in at 217. So, can't figure out the discrepancy here. The performance is decreasing as we increase in our GPU power and capacity. So, not sure if that's a Rainbow Six thing, not sure if that's a data issue thing on our end, but I tested these multiple times, and that's what we were getting consistently with these units. Now, they're close to each other, probably within, a standard deviation or so, but really interesting nonetheless. But you'll see the data flips when we go to 1440p Ultra. The 4070 Ti Super actually stays the same at 217 FPS, but now you see a slight decrease with the 4070 Super at 203, and our 4070 comes in at 178 FPS. So, if I saw that first and had similar, I would expect similar results for the 1080p version. I'm not sure, again, what's going on there, but I still wanted to mention this so you could see what we were actually getting. So it's kind of a toss-up for the 4070 Super and 4070 Ti Super with Rainbow Six. Next, we have Assassin's Creed, 1080p ultra-high settings. 4070 comes in at 154 FPS. 4070 Super comes in at 165 FPS. 4070 Ti Super comes in at 176 FPS. Assassin's Creed 1440p, the 4070 comes in at 116 FPS, 4070 Super 126 FPS, and the 4070 Ti Super comes in at 147 FPS. Far Cry 6 1080p Ultra settings, the 4070 gets 122 FPS, 4070 Super gets 124 FPS, and 4070 Ti Super also gets 124 FPS. So you're seeing basically the same performance across all three GPUs. 1440p tells a similar story for the Ti Super and the regular Super, where the 4070 non-Super falls off a little bit at 113 FPS compared to 124 for the other GPUs. Borderlands 3, you'll see our 1080p settings here. 4070 comes in at 131 FPS, 4070 Super comes in at 135 FPS, and we get 4 extra FPS on the 4070 Ti Super at 139. 1440p tells a similar story here. 4070 comes in at 107 FPS, 4070 Super 116 FPS, and then our 4070 Ti Super comes in at 130 FPS. So where does all that data leave us? Because I'm sure you're overwhelmed. So let me break it down for you. First, we're looking at the average FPS percent change. So from the baseline established at the 4070, how does the Super and the Ti Super compare? What are we seeing improvement-wise? Well, on average, you'll get a 4% bump in FPS for the 4070 Super and an 11% bump in average FPS for the Ti Super. Now, compared to the 4070 Super and the 4070 Ti Super, you'll see a 6% bump and increase in average FPS. So let's look at that from a different perspective. Again, with the 4070 being the baseline GPU benchmark for cost, what is the percent increase for the 4070 Super? You'll be looking at a 12% increase. So think about that, 12% increase in cost for a 4% increase in average FPS. And the 4070 Ti Super tells a similar story. Compared to the benchmark of the 4070, you'll see a 50% increase in cost, but you'll be getting an 11% increase in performance. Comparing the 4070 Super to the Ti Super, you'll see that we have a 33% increase in cost, and you'll get a 6% increase in average FPS. So where does that leave us with this ZOTAC pre-built? Well, there's a lot you need to know when you're building or buying a PC. What's most important to you? Is it CPU, GPU, storage? Is it your I/O options? Is it your power supply? I mean, there's just a lot of things you have to consider, and only you can decide that for your needs. In the case of this pre-built, ZOTAC did a great job using name brand parts and components. Everything's held up great so far, past all of our reliability and stability tests. And the focal point and centerpiece is going to be your beautiful white GPU, your ZOTAC Gaming RTX 4070 Ti Super. It's spectacular, but I feel like this case doesn't do it justice because there's no vertical mount option to see the beautiful triple fans, and it's not all white. I'd like to see, at least some of the case components maybe, changed out to white. I'd love to see like the cooler, the RAM, even the motherboard, if we could get a white or a silver in there. It'd be great to see some of those things added in the future to give us that all-white option to really complement our GPU. But it performs great. It's held up great so far. No issues there. They did a nice job cable managing everything. It all goes back to the data we looked at earlier and what is worthwhile to you. What do you want to pay for? What do you want to upgrade? What is most important to you? And that's only something you can decide.